They're not needed, so.
Good afternoon, everyone. We still have a member or two that needs to show up, but I think we're going to get started anyway, since it's Friday afternoon and President's Day weekend and everybody wants to go home. So we are going to start this afternoon with the Accountability and Implementation Board. Laura Hyde is our budget analyst, and the agency representatives will be Rachel Heiss, welcome. And she is the executive director. Laura, go ahead.
Right. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Again, my name is Laura Hyde. I'm the budget analyst for the Accountability and Implementation Board, or AIB, which was established as part of Chapter 36 of 2021. It's an independent agency responsible for the oversight of Maryland for Blueprint for Maryland's future program implementation and evaluation of its outcomes. It has a 7-member board appointed by the governor for staggered terms of 6 years. Starting with the operating budget summary on page 1, the fiscal 2024 budget decreases by $54,000 or 1% to $4.8 million. AIB is funded with special funds from the Blueprint for Maryland's Future Fund, which is a special fund created by Chapter 36, as I mentioned before, Blueprint for Maryland's Future Grant Program. Its agency receives a minimum mandated funding amount of $4.8 million in the fiscal 2024 proposed budget. Just moving down on page 2, AIB is responsible for the oversight of that program, and from February to June 2022, the agency operated under the Maryland State Department of Education, but in fiscal 23, the Department of Budget and Management moved the agency to a new budget code, R12, and independent from MSDE. 2 fiscal 22 budget amendments appropriated a total of $1.4 million in gaming revenue to AIB for its initial operating expenses. And in fiscal 23, the agency received an additional allocation of 5 positions and $280,000 through a deficiency appropriation, which brought the total appropriation for AIB in fiscal 22 to $1.6 million. The agency is allowed to retain unused funds in fiscal 22, but the statute does not explicitly authorize their reappropriation to the agency. AIB reports that due to unexpected difficulties during the transition to an independent agency, it didn't have access to its budget for operating expenses from February to November 2022. So DLS suggests that the agency comment on their current status of operations and availability of those funds to support operations in the future. If you'll please turn to page 3, this is Exhibit 1, the overview of agency spending. So this shows that regular personnel is 45% of the agency's budget, $2.1 million. The grants are actually a placeholder for this agency, and DLS suggests that AIB comment on the grant funds and their usage. Contractual services are $296,000 or 6% of their budget. Of this amount, $250,000 is allocated to an independent evaluation of Blueprint for Maryland's Future Grant Program as required in 5410 of the education article. The remaining $416,000 of this budget is allocated for routine operating expenses. If you'll please turn to page 5 under personnel. So the fiscal 2024 proposed budget for AIB has 15 regular positions and 0.75 contractual positions. The budgeted turnover rate is 2%, and vacancies above turnover are about 11 positions. So this will allow the agency to fill its 10 remaining positions in fiscal 2024. In fiscal 2023, the agency filled 4 full-time positions. And in fiscal 23 and 24, the agency plans to hire an additional 10 positions, as I mentioned previously. So if you'll please turn to page 8, this is the timetable for reporting requirements. So AIB is responsible for a number of reporting requirements. If you see at the top here, the AIB has its own interim report that was due in November 2022. LEAs, the local education agencies and state agencies, have their CIPs, their comprehensive implementation plans, due soon in the spring. Then AIB did submit its own CIP in December of 2022. It's finished, and that is annually updated in August. So that would be August of calendar 2023. There's a Blueprint interim evaluation report that I just mentioned, due in 2024, a report on teacher diversity in 2026, and another report in December of 2030. This is not all of the activity that agency is engaged in, but this is just kind of a brief timeline of what they do. In this current calendar year, or in calendar 22, the agency made progress on internal goals, hiring new staff, establishing advisory committees, and providing training to MSDE and the career and CTE committees expert review teams, to name a few things. Part of their 2022 calendar 2022 goals was to complete a communications and outreach plan to work with LEAs on blueprint implementation, goals and outcomes. And so DLS recommends that AIB provide the committees with an update on the status of both the annual report and the communication plan. And so the recommended actions are on page 11. There's just one request for a JCR to update a status update on expenditures, personnel, and managing for results. That concludes my presentation, and I stand for questions.
Thank you very much. Great job, as always. Any questions? Rachel, so nice to see you. Mr. Leggett, it's wonderful to have you here too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're happy to be here. I'm going to defer to the chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and for the members of the committee. I want to also thank Laura for your analysis and working with our board and with Rachel. I'd have to say that Rachel is really an outstanding employee and one that I think we really needed in order to get this endeavor off the ground. Because as you've indicated in your earlier comments, we started late. It was no fault of the board. We had challenges in addressing the funds that we needed in order to proceed efficiently. But despite all of that, working with limited staff, we were able to put together a very comprehensive initial plan. Many thought this could not be done, and we were able to achieve this. And so this is the foundation for which we start. And we are very proud that we've been able to get that completed thus far. We clearly support the $4.8 million in the governor's FY 2024 budget. We think that is consistent with what the early requirements were for us, and we'll continue to stay on the ground. As I indicated before, this is the basis of which we start. And we did not put this together simply in a back room, an office, or a closet. It was done with the help and support of a large number of Marylanders, our stakeholders, the people who work with, local agencies. We did this over an 8-month period with a great deal of transparency and work involving a number of people throughout the state. We had, I think, several town hall meetings, a number of hearings, and quite a bit of support around. We don't possess you may hear differences about some of the things that are in here, but I think this gets us off the ground. And more importantly, we decided not to suggest any significant changes at this point in time. We do have a technical request. I think it's House Bill 770 and Senate Bill 913 that makes a technical correction regarding for the pre-K funding to provide funding for children with disabilities, children who live in homes where English is not the primary language spoken, and children experience homelessness. That bill is something that we fully support, and this is a technical correction consistent with what the blueprint required in the first place. We are quite transparent. There's an active website that we have on available now, and a number of other things we've done. We've been out all over the state making presentation and explaining to people the various factors that are included herein. Let me just say one thing about the challenges that we face now. The challenge that we face now is to ensure that we deal with what I consider to be the cultural changes, because people, when we talked earlier about what the blueprint meant, I think intellectually people accepted that. They were very much embrace of it. Seldom we have any criticism about it. But once you put it in writing and you show people what it actually means, this is a significant change in education, public education in the state of Maryland. This is not a simple, a minor adjustment. This is a major, major change. And with that, you have some pushback in terms of the pace of this change and other factors that come therein, but it's a major change. If this was easy, you guys would have done it a long time ago. And I want to congratulate you for passing the legislation and to make certain that we make some changes related to public education throughout the state of Maryland. We've also had some earlier criticism related to the number of people on the board. There are 7. And we had a question about geographical diversity, other issues as well. So we've established an advisory board. Approximately 20 people serve on those boards, and they're really represented throughout the entire state of Maryland. So we're very proud of that, and they've been working with us as well. We will go back through the responses and other questions that you may have, but as I said before, we have more than made up for a significant part of the time, and I think that we're back on schedule, and we'll see fairly clear how we work when we get the response back from the local agencies related to this plan. Other challenge we may have, we'll deal with the terms of the budget aspects as well.
Thank you very much. When I heard that you were going to be involved with this, and I've heard people in so many conversations say how pleased they are that you're there working with that board, and you add such credibility. And it really is it's just a great thing that you're doing that work that you're doing. And for Rachel, I mean, from the very beginning, and I've kind of been connected with this since the onset. Rachel, this was kind of your vision. You were just the perfect person to be leading this board. And I'm just hoping that you have the supports that you need. I know you don't have an office yet, but I'm hoping that you get the supports that you need to see this whole vision through, because I'm a huge believer in the blueprint, and I think people have to see it through in order to actually realize what a great plan it is.
I couldn't agree more. I think, and let me just say, working with the board chair has been a real pleasure, despite all the challenges that we've been dealing with. I'm very pleased to be in this role. It is, we always knew implementing the blueprint would be hard. But I have to admit, I didn't anticipate how difficult it would be to start up a new state agency. So that has been quite a challenge. But I think that we are hitting our stride now. We really were focused on getting the initial plan done and getting that out so that everyone, so that we could continue with implementation of the blueprint. It's already been delayed. We didn't want it to be delayed any further. So that's really been the focus of our work, as well as getting the 4 advisory committees that the chair mentioned up and running. There is an advisory committee for each of the 4 substantive pillars: early childhood, teachers and leaders, college and career readiness, and more resources for students who need them. And they've been meeting at least quarterly, and actually more often than that. So it's a great group of both practitioners, parents, students. So it's a good mix of folks to support the work of the blueprint. And I think as we move forward, they're going to be even more active. In fact, they're going to be part of, so the next stage of the work for the plan is the outcome measures work group. This is a work group that the AIB has appointed to look into the outcome measures that are part of the initial plan. But we could only get so far in the initial plan in terms of identifying what the outcome measures will be that we are going to measure progress of implementation on. So we've appointed this work group. It includes experts, both statewide and outside of state government, as well as LEAs experts, to really look at what the measures should be, what the metrics should be, and then to start to set targets for implementation expectations. And as part of that, there's a core group that will meet. And then as each pillar area is discussed, the advisory committee for that pillar area will be part of the discussion around the outcome measures, metrics, and targets. And then those recommendations will go to the full AIB for consideration to include in the updated blueprint plan that has to be adopted by August 1st. So that's the next phase of the work that we're doing, as well as, of course, staffing up. We have a number of vacant positions, as the Laura Hyde mentioned. It's nice to see all my DLS colleagues. So the board at the last meeting approved a hiring process and a staffing plan. So we're ready to move forward to fill the remaining vacancies. It's a lot of important positions that we need to fill. And while it on the one hand would have been nice to have more people sooner, on the other hand, I will say, as a startup agency, sort of like figuring out what you need and who you need doing what, it's sort of been a process. So I won't say we planned it this way, but I think the way it's worked out is actually going to end up being more productive for us. Did you want me to run through the responses? Okay, sure. So as Laura mentioned, the AIB was not able to access its budget for about half of the fiscal year. And what that means is, payroll was being paid, but any other expenses we weren't able to pay. And so that has been challenging, but we are now able to access our budget, pay our bills. And so we're on our way, and we're gonna do our best to move forward and use our resources. But of course, we want to use them. We want to use them effectively and efficiently. And so, I think the reality is that we probably may not expend all of our funds again in this fiscal year. And that's a challenge because we didn't have access for 22 and now part of 23. And so, so we want to balance it. We want to use the funds. We don't want to leave money on the table, but we also don't want to spend money that we don't need yet. So we're going to be responsible about that and do our best. We're to jump ahead to the recommendation where, we concur with the analyst's recommendation to submit a JCR with updated expenditure information for 23 and as we move into 24. And that kind of segues into the second comment about the use of grant funds to cover operating expenses. So as you may recall, in the blueprint bill, the base budget for the AIB is mandated at $1.8 million as an appropriation. And then there's an additional $3 million for technical assistance in fiscal 22, 23, and 24. So the first 3 years. Those funds were initially budgeted as grants by DBM, thinking that they would be grants to the LEAs or other local agencies. But the AIB has really, at this point, been using existing staff to provide technical assistance and also contractual services. And we are planning to continue to do that. If grants are appropriate, we would certainly consider that. But at this point, the issues that LEAs particularly are requiring technical assistance on are pretty common. And so we're using our staff resources and some contractual resources to support that. And so the dollars will be shifted to contractual services from grants in the working appropriation. And so we'll include that in our JSCR report to you. In terms of the annual report and communication plan, we did receive a verbal approval from the presiding officer staff to submit the annual report after the comprehensive plan was finished, because we were really very focused on that. And also we wanted to include legislative recommendations in the report. So we're going to get that in next week. It's ready to go. And apologies for the delay in submitting that. In terms of the communication plan, it's sort of a two-part thing. So there's the communication with the public, and better educating, for lack of a better way to put this, regular people about what the blueprint is and why it's important. And then, of course, there's the more technical work with the LEAs. And so we are going to be engaging a communications consultant. The board talked about this at last meeting to support the work with the public education and outreach campaign. And then in terms of the LEAs, as the chair described, we've been doing a lot of work, both in public meetings and in technical assistance sessions to support the LEAs in developing their comprehensive plans, which are due in March. And we're going to continue to do that, as well as we're working on a plan for the upcoming year to support the LEAs with really robust technical assistance, because as hard as this first plan is, and I'm sure you all are probably hearing from your systems that, it's been a real heavy lift. Next year's plan is probably going to be harder for them. So we're going to ramp up our technical assistance and really help them, think differently, which, as the chair said, it's a culture shift that is challenging. Change is hard. I mean, that's human nature. So, and then the last comment was on whether the vacant positions will affect the review of the timeline for the review of the plans. So obviously it's going to be a little more challenging, but we think that we are going to be able to handle the review with the existing staff and members, as well as some external reviewers and consultants. And essentially the goal is to have the LEA plans reviewed. And for the LEA plans, as a reminder, MSDE also reviews those and makes a recommendation back to the AIB. So the plan is to have those reviewed within 3 months of initial submission and hopefully approved. So that would be in June of this June, that there would be decisions on the LEA plans.
Madam Chair, one item I just wanted to go back and emphasize that I think is quite important. That is the outcome measures that Rachel mentioned, because this is a 10-year plan. The expectation, and when you passed legislation, was not that we would wait for 10 years to determine whether or not we are on track to meet the overall goal. The plan basically calls for us to have interim analysis and matrix for which we will analyze what progress we're making in order to make changes. The challenge for us is make certain that everybody fully understand where we start, what is the foundation, because there's a great deal of differences within the state about where we are today.
Yep.
So we need to be sure about where we start. Then we measure what we think would be improvements, and we have different definitions about that. And so, and we don't want to hold local agencies responsible for something that is not realistic, but we want to more realistically approve and adopt things that are consistent with what we think is progress. So that's a very, very important item.
You're right.
That's why we rush through that. And we're going to have a ongoing process to fully evaluate that, so that we make sure we get that piece right. Where you start, what progress you make, so that once you look at this on an annual or whatever periodic basis we have, you have a common understanding where we started, where we are. So as we move to that 10-year period, we can evaluate what type of progress we make.
Okay. Sounds great. Are there comments from the committee? Senator Benson, anything today?
I am just so overwhelmed with joy that we have two people seated here that understands the need for ensuring that this blueprint is really what we would hope that it's going to be. I mean, when we talk to people all over the state of Maryland, they want, we are the richest state, with number 2 in the country when it comes to wealth and education. And they are expecting for our school system in each of our counties to excel. So they don't mind putting the money out. It's the accountability and being sure that the money is well spent in the classroom. The resources are available for the teachers, particularly in kindergarten, pre-kindergarten, first and second grade. And if we don't do something there, by the time they get to fifth grade, I don't have to tell you all know the data.
Mhm.
So I'm just so excited that you all are here. And I know that you're going to do a wonderful job holding people accountable for the money that we're spending. Because we can't keep throwing money down a dark hole. You know, we got to be sure that our children are ready. And so I'm very excited about this committee that's been organized, because we need to focus in on working closely also with the Maryland Department of Education, because I'll tell you, I won't say anything else. Thank you very much. You all know that I'm a very,
Senator
very
Borderman,
frank
you're
person,
good?
very
Questions?
outspoken, but I'm not going to go there today.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll move to the University of Maryland College Park campus. Sarah Baker is the budget analyst and Dr. Pines is here. Welcome. Need to plug in.
I think I got it.
You good?
So I'm going to start with Exhibit 1 on page 4, which shows the trends in first-time applications. And between fall 2020 and 22, applications increased by over 76%. And this is due to College Park's move to the common application. The acceptance rate decreased from 43% in 21 to 36% in 22. Because if College Park were to maintain the same acceptance rate with its increased applications, it would have resulted in enrollment exceeding their goals and capacities. Exhibit 2 on page 5 shows the fall enrollment, which declined 1.8% or by 568 students in fall 2022. For the third year, the number of continuing students declined by 1.6%. After increasing over 13% in 21, first-time students declined by 3.5% in 22, which can be partly attributed to the decline in the acceptance rate. Turning to Exhibit 3 on page 6 and retention rates, the second year rate consistently exceeded 90%. And given that a certain percentage of students will likely leave after their first year for various reasons, institutions are not likely to achieve a 100% retention rate. So therefore, College Park may be at optimum level. And I know the third year rate continues to exceed 80%. Turning to Exhibit 4 on page 7, this shows this 6-year graduation rates. And the graduation rates of all students increased to their highest level with a 2017 cohort exceeding 80%. Exhibit 5 on page 8 compares the 6-year graduation rates of Pell and non-Pell first-time, full-time, and transfer students. In 21, the graduation rate of Pell transfer students exceeded that of non-Pell transfer students, and overall Pell and non-Pell first-time, full-time students graduate at a higher rate. Turning to affordability, in Exhibit 6 on page 9 compares the cost of attendance with the net average price. In 21, the net average price was 38.3% lower than the public price. Also in 21, the average price declined for all income groups except for the highest level. And this can be attributed to the freezing of tuition and fee and room and board rates at the 2020 level. Exhibit 7 on page 10 shows spending on institutional aid, and spending on aid increased by 5% in 21 to $61.9 million. Need-based aid awards account for almost 40% of expenditures. I would like to note that last month, College Park launched the Terrapin Commitment, which is a $20 million annual need-based aid program. This program ensures that tuition and fees are fully covered for Pell eligible in-state students who are enrolled full-time and have unmet need after accounting for scholarship grants and estimated family contribution. In addition, the grant will cover 50% of the remaining unmet need before loans up to the cost of room and board. When this program was officially started this year, eligible students enrolled in fall 2022 received grant funding to cover tuition and fees. And additional funding was used to reduce the loan burden for eligible students who graduated last December and assisted others with additional education costs to allow them to maintain their enrollment. Okay, moving on to the budget on Exhibit 8 on page 12 shows budget changes for unrestricted funds by program area for 22 and 23. Expenditures increased 263.1 million or 15.1% in 23. And a majority of this increase was due to the general salary increases in 23. And also in 23, education and general expenditures exceed revenues by 74.4 million. And this shortfall is more than covered by the 92.3 million surplus and auxiliary, leaving 17.9 million to be transferred to the fund balance. Turning to the proposed budget on page 14 in Exhibit 9, state funds grow 13.3% or 96.9 million in 24 after adjusting for deficiencies and general salary increases. In 24, the general salary increases account for 67.9% or 65.5 million of the increase in general funds. 8.4 million of additional funding is related to 5 mandates, and they are listed on the previous page 13. So this leaves 22.7 million in state funding to cover other current service costs or program enhancements. We asked the president to comment on how College Park plans to use the available 22.7 million in state funds. Turning to Exhibit 10 on page 16, this shows unrestricted revenues by source. The impact of the pandemic on revenues can be seen started in 2020 when the campus closed during the spring semester. Auxiliary revenues fell by over 18% or 54.4 million. Overall, total revenues declined 0.5%. In 21, revenues declined by 113.4 million, and auxiliary revenues were down by over 32%, as most classes were taught remotely and residence halls operated at reduced capacity. Auxiliary revenues comprised 10% of revenues, down from 17% prior to the pandemic. Revenues in auxiliary have since rebounded to pre-pandemic levels. I would note in 23, tuition and fee revenues comprised 34% of revenues compared to 38% in 22, which could be partly attributed to decline in enrollment. And state funds comprise a larger proportion of revenue in 23, increasing from 33% to 37%, which again could be attributed to the general salary increases. The recommendation is on page 18 and headed to see the USM overview for system-wide recommendations. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Great job. Any questions? Okay, Dr. Pines, welcome.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Senator King. Good afternoon, Senator Benson. Good afternoon, Senator Quarterman. Thank you for having me here. I'm very proud of the work that you guys are doing relative to the blueprint. We're very much involved with that, so I'm very excited to hear the developments that were prefaced to me. I'm Darrell Pines, and I'm just very proud to be the president of the flagship campus of the state of Maryland at the University of Maryland College Park, and I appreciate the opportunity to discuss our budget. I'd first like to thank you all, the Senate, and the entire General Assembly for all of your past support. As a land-grant institution and Maryland's flagship university, we take great pride in serving every jurisdiction of the state, and your partnership has made that possible. I'd also like to thank Governor Moore and his new administration for support reflected in this year's budget and the excellent analysis provided by Ms. Sarah Baker. I am immensely proud of our efforts in the past year to reimagine learning, take on humanity's grand challenges, invest in people and communities, and partner to advance the public good. From faculty earning National Academy designations to students winning national scholarships, from state-of-the-art classrooms to inspiring athletic achievements like the one last night, and from research restoring the Chesapeake Bay oyster population to creating the quantum internet of the future, we are setting new standards in ambition and success for the state of Maryland. We are ranked number 19th among top public schools by U.S. News and World Report, and number 12 among public universities ranked in the best global schools by the same U.S. News and World Report. Our graduation rate is the highest in our history among all public universities as well in the state of Maryland. And in fact, we rank 8th in the nation among all U.S. public institutions across, as determined by the Chronicles of Higher Education. The National Science Foundation has also ranked the University of Maryland as the top non-HBCU nationally and number 8 overall in graduating Black or African-American undergraduates who later achieve doctoral degrees in their future. And along with the University of Maryland, Baltimore, the National Science Foundation has also ranked as number 10 among public institutions for research and development spending and number 17 overall. I'd like to highlight two important university initiatives that will continue us on this really important journey and path. First, as mentioned by Ms. Sarah Baker, last year we announced the Terrapin Commitment, a $20 million annual investment in need-based financial aid, the largest program in our history. The Terrapin Commitment is ensuring the tuition and fees are completely covered for in-state Pell eligible students who are enrolled full-time and have unmet financial need. As of this semester, more than 3,000 of our students are already benefiting from this brand new program that started in January. Second, we recently awarded the winners of our Grand Challenges Grant Program, which will invest up to $30 million in potentially world-changing ideas. Our three top award winners, who will each receive $3 million over 3 years or $1 million per year, are focusing on addressing climate challenges for a sustainable Earth, state literacy, which is really important, and equity, and food, energy, and water solutions for community resilience. So once again, I thank you for your enduring partnership and the ways that it has enabled us to achieve excellence and create an inclusive, multicultural campus environment where everyone can achieve their full potential. The analysis did request a comment on how the university intends to use the additional $22.7 million in state funding. The funding is allocated for fringe benefit increases and statewide adjustments based on the Department of Budget and Management summary information. These are mandatory costs due to the rate hikes in health insurance and other benefits provided to state employees. I'm happy to take any additional questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions for the committee? Senator Quarterman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. President, for being here. More of a comment than anything, and just want to thank you for your leadership, your continued leadership here at the university. I mean, the numbers you put out there, top 20, this top number 1 in this, is just extremely impressive.
Thank you.
So thank you for everything you've been doing for the school and your team and everything there. We speak of teams also. You can put that in there. How about those Terps last night?
It was impressive.
Nice win.
Glad
Take
you were
care.
there.
Thank you.
Thank you. You know, we continue to hear from people that are a bit sour grapes because they can't get into Maryland. And, you know, the bottom line is that the level is pretty high there, and we take the best of the best in Maryland. And, you know, everybody can't go there, and it wouldn't be the great school it is if we did take every student. So I congratulate you on everything that you're doing. I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And we do try to create pathways, by the way, for students who don't get in as freshmen. We work the 16 two-year institutions in the state to provide pathways.
Right. And for a lot of the scholarships we give out, it's with that in mind of maybe taking 2 years at a community college and then
Yes.
getting into Maryland. So they've
Absolutely.
always got a chance.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. There, Benson, you're good. All right. Thank you very much.
right, thank you so
Enjoy
much.
your weekend.
All right, you too.
Okay, next we have the MHEC Student Financial Assistance. Kelly Norton is here. Jeff Newman is going to represent the agency.
Thank you. The first item we will be discussing involves FAFSA filing. Exhibit 2 on page 8 compares Maryland's FAFSA completion rate to our competitor states. As is shown at just under 36.8%, Maryland compares favorably to 8 states, while the number of Maryland students who have completed a FAFSA is over 2.9% above the 2020 through 2021 academic year. Exhibit 3 on page 9 shows the total number of FAFSAs filed in the state. Starting in the 2017 to 2018 cycle, the numbers exceeded $150,000. I mean, 150,000, which can be attributed to moving up the filing date 3 months to October and using prior tax information to determine eligibility. However, there was a steady decline beginning that cycle that was reversed in 2022 to 2023 cycle, with FAFSA filings totaling 160,437. It should be noted that the 2023 to 2024 numbers are as of January. Students have until March 1st to file their FAFSAs to apply for state aid. Turning to guaranteed access grants, which cover 100% of financial need for the lowest income students. On page 11, Exhibit 4 shows the number of GA awards. In 2023, GA or Guaranteed Access Awards increased to its highest total ever of 4,583, up 24% from 2022. Overall, since 2016, the number of initial awards has grown 345% from 477 in 2016 to 2,125 in 2023. Exhibit 5 on page 12 shows that 93% of those receiving a GA grant in fiscal 2022 had an expected family contribution lower than $3,850. The other awards are older ones that are moving through the system. Moving to educational assistance grants, which cover 40% of the need of the four-year institutions and 60% of the need at community colleges. On page 13, Exhibit 6 summarizes the information on these grants. Again, the effects of the early FAFSA filing can be seen with the number of on-time applications increasing in 2018 and 2019. The number of EA awards increased 2% from fiscal 2019 through 2020, growing from 52.2 million to 53.4 million. These numbers have decreased since fiscal 2021 as awards provided for guaranteed access grants have increased. You'll note the number on the wait list declined in recent years, which reflects a change in the EFC cutoff to the wait list to reflect the Pell Index. For 2022, that number was $6,495. Exhibit 7 on page 14 shows that 83.1% of the EA awards go to students with a EFC below $3,850. Exhibit 8 on page 15 shows the number of award recipients and average award amount by program. Overall, MHEC expects the total number of recipients to increase by nearly 21.6% in 2023. In past years, MHEC has provided estimates for the allowance year, but was not able to do so this year. DLS is asking MHEC to explain why the information is not available for the fiscal 2024 allowance. Turning to the budget on page 16, Exhibit 9 shows spending by type of aid. Of the $183.4 million provided in fiscal 2024, 74% goes to need-based aid, with career-based aid, legislative scholarships, and unique populations, each accounting for 8%, and the loan assistance repayment programs accounting for 3%. The proposed budget is shown in Exhibit 10 on page 17. As a result of Chapter 23 of 2022, mandated funding increases for the EEA awards, the James Proctor Scholarship, and the Conroy Memorial Scholarship. Chapter 36 of 2021 mandated an increase in the spending for teaching fellowships and teaching fellows for Mellon Scholarship. In total, funding increases from the 2023 adjusted budget by $17.6 million in the 2024 allowance. Exhibit 11 on page 18 shows the balance of the need-based student financial assistance fund. This account was set up to receive unused scholarship funds that can be used in future years. Currently, MHEC anticipates leaving a balance of $12.7 million by the conclusion of fiscal 2023. Moving to the issues, which begins on page 19, the first issue involves the credit completion requirement for financial aid awards. The College Affordability Act of 2016 required students who are recipients of the EEA awards, including the EA grant, the GA grant, and campus-based educational assistance grant, to meet certain credit completion requirements. And if they did not, their scholarship could be prorated or eliminated. The intent of this legislation was to encourage students who receive the EEA award to graduate on time, which means 15 credits per semester or 30 credits per year. Exhibit 12 on page 20 shows the outcome of the credit completion requirement for the 2021 through 2022 credit roster. 27% attained at least 30 credits and were eligible to maintain the full award. 24% attained at least 24 credits, but less than 30 and were eligible to receive a prorated award, 20% less than the full award amount, while the plurality, 49%, did not attain the 24 credits needed and lost their EEA award. Exhibit 13 on page 21 shows the credit completion outcomes for the 2018 through 2019 credit cycle through the 2021 through 2022 credit cycle. As can be seen in the exhibit, the proportion of students who fail to achieve 30 credits has grown over time. Conversely, the proportion of students who attained at least 30 credits has shrunk. The secretary should comment on the increasing number of students not fulfilling the credit completion requirement. Exhibit 14 on page 22 shows how this credit completion requirement impacted the different higher education segments for the 2021 through 2022 credit roster. As can be seen in the exhibit, the private four-year institutions had the greatest percentage of their student populations attain at least 30 credits. However, at the community college level, 79.4% of that segment fell below the 24 credits requirement. Exhibit 15 on page 23 documents the segment breakdown over the 3 years worth of data, well, 4 years, sorry, of data by the percentage that attain fewer than 24 credits. As shown in the exhibit, the percentage of students failing to meet the 24 credit requirement has grown across all the segments. The secretary should comment on the credit completion requirement, specifically addressing what changes MHEC can make to its EEA students' outreach to encourage credit completion. And the executive director of the Maryland Association of Community Colleges should comment on what actions are being taken at the respective community colleges to advertise the credit completion requirement and efforts being made to help students keep EEA eligibility. The second issue begins on page 23 and concerns the reorganization of student financial aid as an independent agency. MHEC was required to submit a JCR report about what this reorganization would entail. It is not unusual for state student financial aid agencies to be separate from the entity that approves college academic programs. Exhibit 16 on page 24 shows that competitor state student financial aid agencies and 6 of the 11 are independent. MHEC has indicated that to separate the Student Financial Aid Assistance Office would require additional staff to recreate the resources it now has as an entity of MHEC, such as an executive team and IT. In addition to new staff, the agency would need new office space. Overall, MHEC does not recommend separating OSFA from MHEC. The next issue involves the program evaluation of the student financial assistance, which begins on page 25. The Office of Program Evaluation and Government Accountability, or OPEGA, focused its evaluation of the agency on the EEA program. Items of note were the recommendation to streamline the application process due to students not receiving awards due to not updating, uploading necessary documents, in the unmet need of students. Those students just above the federal poverty line require $7,000 more than GA recipients just below the cutoff with over $19,000 in unmet need. OPEGA recommended streamlining the application process and looking to how funding is allocated for the GA and EA awards so they are not in competition for the same funding. MHEC should comment on the findings and recommendations of the analysis, particularly on the feasibility of the recommendations and what additional resources would be necessary. DLS recommended actions are found on page 27. The first recommended action is for MHEC to submit a report on the impact of the credit completion requirement on financial aid awards. And the second is a report on the next generation scholars post-secondary outcomes. And this completes my presentation. Thank you.
Good job, Kelly. Thank you for getting thrown into this year. You've done a great job.
Thank you.
Okay, we have at the table this afternoon, Jeff Newman. Are you acting as secretary today? Is that?
I would say I'm the representative for MHEC.
Okay, that's good. And we have Anthony Reiner from MHEC.
No,
Anthony Reiner? No. Okay. But
Sorry.
we do have Brad Phillips. And what is your name, sir?
Al Dorsey.
Okay, and are you speaking also?
He will be,
Okay.
yes.
All right, you want to take it ahead?
Yes,
Take it away.
thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. My name is Jeff Newman. I am the Assistant Secretary for Finance and Administration at MHEC. And as I mentioned, I am currently representing the agency at today's hearing. I'm joined here by Al Dorset, who is our new Director of the Office of Student Financial Assistance. He began in August, and he comes to the office with 23 years of experience at the institutional level in financial aid. He was most recently Executive Director at Delaware State University, Executive Director for Financial Aid. And he was also, for a time, Director of Financial Aid at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. So I'm very happy to have Al running our Office of Student Financial Assistance. I'm also joined by Dr. Barbara Schmertz, who is our Director of our Office of Research and Policy Analysis, and Lee Towers, who's our Executive Director of External Relations. To begin, I'd like to thank Ms. Norton for echo your comments, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Norton, for her thorough analysis of our programs of our student financial assistance. And as you could see by some of the data, we award financial aid to 50 to 60,000 students annually so that they can attend post-secondary education and pursue their educational goals. So I think we're very happy for your support. We appreciate your support annually for our financial aid programs, and we will continually work to make them more efficient and more effective as we move forward.
And we appreciate your support when we're giving out these scholarships. The response from the agency has been so much better the last couple of years. So we are very appreciative of that. My staff is, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. We're working very hard to improve our response time. So for the first issue on page 15, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Dorset to respond.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. For the first question, let me take full responsibility. I apologize. Transitioning over has been key. Coming with over 20 years of experience within financial aid, but transitioning into Maryland Higher Education Commission, as well as the Office of Student Financial Assistance. It's a different world when you look at it. So we were able to get the numbers or projections for fiscal year 24 and provide them in the response to the questions. In regards to the next question, should discuss the reasons for the 10.8 million in unused appropriations available for fiscal 2022. In FY 2022, MHEC transferred 10.8 million of unused appropriations to need-based student financial assistance funding. The Maryland Community College Promise Scholarship Program was the primary reason for that. At the end of FY 2022, 8.9 million of unused funds of the appropriation were there, which was transferred over to the need-based funding. So that was the major percentage transferred over. For the next question, I will pass it back over to my colleague, Mr. Newman.
So to comment on the increasing number of students not fulfilling the credit completion requirement, we agree that on-time college graduation is crucial for a successful system of higher education, and that's one of the main reasons why this requirement is in our programs. However, some confusion can be created. The federal government defines full-time, and as well the higher education community define full-time enrollment as 12 credits per semester for financial aid purposes. And students often are questioning whether they need to take 12 credits a semester, 15 credits a semester, but to finish on time, would require 15 credits per semester. So we've got to make that clearer. Also, other reasons could be as a result of the residual effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and then recent changes that we've seen in our economy. Another reason that we see is that students register for an attempt to complete 15 credits per semester, but are often not successful in doing that. Your exhibit on page 22, exhibit 14 of the analysis, did a great job of showing, how this, the results of college completion in the different segments of higher education. And we have some ideas on how we can try to work with the segments of higher education and other folks to try to discuss and determine what other factors, in addition to the ones mentioned, might be contributing to the lack of success in completing college within at least the 4-year programs within 4 years, and obviously the 2-year program successfully as well. The next question was also on the credit completion requirements, specifically addressing what changes MHEC can make. And that is a good question. We are, we try to make sure we have an effective outreach program for the participants, particularly in the EEA programs. For those who receive the award for at least 2 years, we notify them at the end of each year, informing them that their renewal award availability is contingent upon meeting credit requirements. Also, if we see EEA recipients who are falling short on meeting the credit requirements, we try to notify them that should they not meet the requirements, they may become ineligible. So we're trying to help them, but motivate them to catch up or do what they can to try to meet the credit requirements. We will also try to increase communications to these recipients by trying to do a fall term, end of fall term, and mid spring term notifications as well to all EEA not applicants, but eligible. I'm missing the word, but everyone who may be interested and trying to take advantage of the EEA program.
It's always interesting when we give scholarships out in the spring. And even though we spell it out a whole lot, the students are still expecting you to get that cash in hand.
Yes.
And sometimes it's a disappointment to them that it's not actually cash, that it's going to the school.
Yep.
Yeah.
And one thing that we also may suggest is that a interim work group composed of representatives from the segments, MHEC and other stakeholders be created to conduct an in-depth study focusing on the effectiveness of the credit completion requirement and what components, what issues exist that cause students not to be able to complete the credits on time.
One of the things that I find the most often and I've talked about this several times already this session, but I have changed how I give out my senatorial scholarships, in that I used to be able to give $1,000 to kids and they would be totally thrilled with $1,000 towards their tuition.
Yeah.
But in the financial climate that my district is in right now, $1,000, they end up giving it back because they can't afford the rest, even to get into community college. So I've looked at giving less scholarships and larger amounts just to see more kids actually get to go and pursue what they want to pursue.
Yes. And now I'll turn it over again to Al. Oh, wait, actually, you asked the executive director
Or not.
Mac to comment on this issue. So let me do it. Let me turn it over to Brad. I apologize.
Well, good afternoon, Chair, members of the subcommittee. My name is Brad Phillips from the Maryland Association of Community Colleges, and I just want to start by saying thank you for all the help you do to help our students go through your senatorial scholarships. Those are tremendous inspirational stories to me to hear what you all are doing as well. We were asked a specific question by the analysis. Thank you very much, by the way, very thorough analysis about what we're doing in respect to helping advertise credit completion for community college students. And I'll say we do extensive outreach in person. We do it through social media. We do summaries of what is required, but we do not always know exactly what and how many credits students have completed. We know whether it's a renewal award or an initial award. And students have to do, yes, 15 each semester, or 15 one semester, 6 one semester, and 6 in the summer. And then they can appeal to MHEC for for their award. And we don't always know that information. So one recommendation could be MHEC shares with us what that credit completion is, so we can directly advocate with the student as well. But I think there's a bigger problem that this is highlighting to me. And it's the fact that for community college students, when you're using financial aid, especially need-based awards, to influence behavior, that works for a certain population of students, but it is really challenging for students who are unprepared, underprepared, or are non-traditional, who are, in other words, are adults having to work or provide for their family. This credit requirement is forcing them to actually attempt credits and only to get the award, which they're not fully capable of accomplishing. So it only ends up, as you see in the data, with almost 80% not being able to do so, and frustrated by that. There needs to be sort of a thinking about how can we actually create a need-based financial aid program that would help this population of students versus the one that just sort of blankets all students as students who need to do 15 each semester in order to complete on time, because it's not working for our population. So that's just food for thought, but thank you very much.
Okay, any committee questions? I think we're good. Have a nice afternoon.
Well,
Happy
thank you.
President's Day weekend.
Same to you.
Thank you.